everybody, and thank you for watching today. Our discussion is called How to Future-Proof Your Building Firm for 2022, a massive subject. My name is Jo Mulgrew, and I'm Group Operations Director here at HB Excel. And I'd like you to meet Simon, who is part of our Power Hour series. He's got tons of experience, but I would like Simon to fill us in a little bit about you. So tell us, Simon. Better Business Group. What do you do?
Well, firstly, thanks for inviting me back again. I think this is our sixth Power Hour now, actually.
Wow, yeah.
I've personally been a mentor to building firms for 30 years. The Better Business Group was launched in 1995. And at that time, we were actually the first organisation to provide continual monitoring for builders. We are unique in that we work with builders on every quote they do. We speak to their clients. We offer them free help and guidance. And we also offer them free background checks on the other builders. We find out why our builders are winning or losing jobs. We find out who their competitors are, how they're price compared. We also give builders pre-vetted leads to quote on. Since 1995, we've monitored over £2 billion worth of residential work. We've helped members of the public to avoid using around 4,000 road traders.
Wow.
And we've spoken to tens of thousands of builders. So we have a unique overview of the wants and needs of both the builders and their clients.
Okay, well, we've got tons of experience there to share with us. So today we're in October. It's over 18 months since the start of the pandemic. Lots has happened, and most firms are really busy, is what we're hearing. Obviously, prices of materials keep on rising, and it's really hard to stay on top of these price rises and predict where they're going to be by the time that builders start their job. Lots of builders saying we're booked up till 2022. We also know that there's big shortages right now, which is somewhat scuppering progress on projects. Not only in materials, but plant and labour costs are rising as well, compounded by Brexit, COVID, and of course, low numbers into apprenticeships. So lots of non-normal difficulties, should I say, on top of which there's all the usual challenges: not enough hours in the day, margins tight at the best of times. We know that our builders have very hectic working lives, juggling jobs and places to be, tons of paperwork, that'll be quoting, health and safety, dealing with planning, and of course firefighting every day on site with the challenges that pop up. It's a very difficult environment, I'd say, Simon, for building firms to operate in. So many ups and downs. And I'd say, unfortunately, we're starting to hear of small businesses ceasing trading, hence this evening's discussion. How do building firms make sure they're ready for anything in 2022, Simon? Big subject, as I said. How do building firms create a more secure future? Not just getting by, but we want them profitable. How do they future-proof? So we've said difficult times. Some builders are going to be busy, and they might have got plenty of jobs booked in. But are they really doing well, Simon? What would you say to these firms?
Well, I think the first thing to say is forget how busy your diary is at the moment. We're in a completely false market where all the backlog of work from lockdown is now being done. Don't assume business will always be like this, because I can promise you that it won't.
Right, okay.
A full order book for the next 12 months isn't necessarily a good thing. Excuse me, particularly with the current record price increases and shortages of materials that you mentioned earlier. If you're currently winning 7 out of 10 jobs, then you're almost certainly undercharging by at least 15%, if not 20%. And whilst there's loads of work around, there's still loads of cheap prices. In the current climate, you shouldn't be winning more than 5 out of 10 jobs from recommendations, and probably 1 or 2 out of 10 if you're getting them cold or off the web or social media, if you're pricing correctly. We're giving free business reviews to builders every day. All of them are busy, as you mentioned, all are booked ahead, but most are working on very small profits. And none of you watching this went into business to be busy. You wanted some independence, you wanted some financial security, and you have to build profit into the business, otherwise your business just won't survive in the long term. You've got jobs booked in now, so now's the time to stand back, take a good, hard and honest look at the business. When you originally set it up, you had aspirations. It might have been to be your own boss, to build up an asset to pass on or to sell, to work more 9 to 5, to be office-based and not on the tools, to have more personal time with your family, to have money in the bank now and a pension fund for the future. And the reality is that the building game is very hard. And most of you watching this, despite how busy you are grossly underpaid and undervalued for the time and effort and years of experience that you're giving to the clients. Now, I've personally spoken to more than 15,000 builders over the years, and all but a handful of them told me that they were mid-priced.
Right.
Not the cheapest, not the most expensive. It's all you ever hear. What does that mean in reality? What it means is that every job you've ever done, they would have had a cheaper quote from somebody else, but they paid more for you. And similarly, every quote you submit, there are more expensive builders quoting against you, but they're still in business and they're winning jobs every week at their higher prices. And often being mid-priced means actually that you're squeezed from both sides. You're not cheap enough to win the cheap jobs, and you're lacking the reputation to win the profitable prestige ones.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So my message, loud and clear, is you should forget about the cheap guys. They're not quoting to do the same standard or with the same material quality that you are. You should look up to the most expensive builder you know and ask yourself, what do I need to do to make myself attractive to the wealthy clients that these guys are working for? So the only way to future-proof your business is to lift yourself up, work for more upmarket clients who value quality as much or even more than the price. And all of you know that this is achievable. What most of you need is someone to give you a leg up in the right direction, and hopefully we'll start that process with this webinar. HBXL have industry-leading tools to help you price and manage the jobs, and the Better Business Group can show you what successful, expensive builders are doing, and we can help you avoid the costly mistakes that they made to get to where they are today.
Okay, so if builders aren't enjoying the level of success that you're alluding to, where might they be going wrong then, Simon? Into today, what's going on?
Well, the main reason probably is that most builders are stuck in what I call the recommendation rut. So when you start in business, you need to build a client base. Inevitably, to get on the bandwagon, you price a bit cheap to win the first job. You then ensure you do an exceptionally good job so that you get a recommendation in the future. And you think that when you're established, you'll be able to charge more because you've got a reputation for high quality work. Unfortunately, in reality, what happens is that when you're recommended, they tell their friend what a great job you did and what they paid you. So every recommendation that comes to you has got baggage. They've got a preconception of where you are price-wise and what they should expect to pay. And this carries on and on and on. So the job you're doing today, when the daughter wants to use you or a friend wants to use you in a couple of years' time, they're going to expect to pay around the same money as their dad did. So over time, what this does, it builds you a bank of great recommendations, none of which want to pay the right money for the job. And if you look at some of the jobs you've done and the value that you've added to the property, you need to take a step back and ask yourself here, who got the better deal here? Did you or the client? And inevitably, it was the client.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's always downward pressure on your prices because when they don't want to use you, they always tell you it's because you're too expensive. And the reason for that is it's non-confrontational and it gets you off the phone. Has anyone ever turned around to you and said, well, that's much cheaper than I thought it would be. When can you start?
No.
Of course not. Of course not. You never hear that. All you ever hear is price. So over time, the business settles into its comfort zone. You price jobs at a level which keeps your diary full. It keeps your subbies busy. It keeps them loyal to you, and it earns you a wage. Now, it might be you're earning a high wage, but generally you're earning way below what you should be generating in the way of profits for the quality of work you're producing. And very importantly, you have to quote each job individually, and you need to keep records to check what the actual costs were at the end of the job. So if you continually underestimate your labour cost by 10%, then on the next job, you cost it as you normally would have done, but then you add the extra 10% onto your labour cost to cover the missing area.
Okay, and what if anyone watching is worried about work not being in plentiful supply in 2022? I know you give leads to builders to quote on by writing to planning applications. So tell me, what are the planning application numbers looking like at the moment? Are they strong or have they fallen off with COVID? What's the situation?
Okay, bear in mind, I have to read this off my computer because I can't memorise all this. So this is an overview of the planning numbers that we've dealt with over the last few years.
Yeah.
For single residential new build and conversions. 2019 and 2020, the numbers were 27,500 each year. 2021, all the figures I'm going to give for this year are year to date, January to September. So 27,500 for the previous years. This year to September only, 54,500.
Wow. So that's almost doubled, hasn't it? That's nearly doubled.
So that's new build and conversions. For single dwelling renovations, which is probably where most of the guys are involved, that's extensions, loft conversions, garage conversions, basement conversions, conservatories. 2019, 185,000. 2020, 174,000. So
it dropped off a bit.
Yeah. 2021, in 9 months, 223,000. So substantially up.
Yeah.
For multi-residential, new builds and conversions, identical figures, 2019, 2020, 29,000, and 2021 for 9 months, 29,000. So overall numbers here across all the residential areas were broadly the same, 2019 and 2020, but a big spike this year, particularly in the single dwelling work.
Yeah.
Could be a bit misleading because the increase in 2021 likely contains a lot of applications which are either delayed in submission or delayed in decision from the prior year. We know that planning is taking a lot longer to come through at the moment, but it's clear there's been a big spike in residential planning activity this year. So what that tells me is the work is and will be there next year, which is why this is now the perfect time to make changes to your business. If you put your price up 15% and you don't win the job, there's another one around the corner to quote on at the moment.
Yeah, good point.
What I am concerned about is that builders are packing their diaries full of work next year at today's prices. I think you'll talk about that a bit later. And they're doing this, they're at great risk of overtrading.
Okay, and for the benefit of you, Simon, what is overtrading? Have you got a simple definition for us? Because it's an expression they might not have come across before. Okay,
well, overtrading typically happens when the businesses are chasing turnover and they're not paying enough attention to their profit margins. So they expand very, very quickly without having the financial resources to support such a rapid growth. So suddenly the business requires new resources, such as increased staff, maybe vehicles, tools, equipment, and a shortage of those resources on the sites may mean they're unable to deliver on the contracts. If you can't deliver on the contracts, you won't get paid, and you may even be liable for a counterclaim for any losses arising for your failure to deliver. Then there can be cash flow problems, meaning you can't pay the bills. So successful builders are much more selective. They do less work, they have higher profit margins, and overall they make more money.
Right. Okay. So there's a trick there, isn't there? Then you've got to manage your growth very carefully. You've got to manage your cash flow, and you've got to make sure that you've got profits going into the business so that you're filling the bank account. So if you do have any challenges, as per the kind of overtrading explanation from there, you're ready for it. Well, with Estimator Express, I'll just put my software hat on for a minute. Obviously, HBXL, we're a software company, and Estimator Express is one of our top used software products to help building firms. And with Estimator Express, you can actually merge several jobs that you have on the go together, and you can look at the profit and the cash flow situation of the several jobs together. Why is that important? Where you can see when your stage payments are dropping in, how that's impacted by the cost going out, and you can see very carefully how you're looking. So top tip, Estimator Express is more than just estimating software. It's actually a management tool to help you avoid that overtrading situation. And lots of builders are really, as you say, they're really busy. They've got so much work lined up, if not back to back, overlapping. So they're bound to kind of enter this overtrading territory. And what with supplies from merchants and what have you being rather tricky at the moment, you could easily walk into that trap. Where you can't deliver the project for lack of supplies. Anyway, we've spoken in one of our previous webinars about the measures that you can use to decide if you think Simon, a builder, is charging the correct money. For the benefit of new viewers, could you go over that again for me? I think they'll think that's really, really useful.
Yeah, sure. In our Price and Profit Masterclass webinar, I talked about my 4 golden rules for pricing jobs. The first one is charge more. You can and you definitely should. The second one is decide on your markup percentage and calculate it correctly. The third one is understand your business overhead and allow for it in the profit calculation. And the fourth one is every job has a value and you should price accordingly. And for those viewers that haven't seen the webinar, I strongly suggest that you do. We had record numbers of viewers for that webinar and the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. So I have a quick test that will establish whether you're calculating your profits correctly. Ask yourself 6 things. Are you on the tools yourself? Do you work from home? Does a family member help you with the paperwork? Does the business have cash flow problems? Do your accounts show a loss or only a very small profit? Are you unable to afford to pay into a pension? If you answered yes to any of my 6 tests, you're almost certainly undercharging and your profits are much smaller than they should be and that you deserve. In reality, what's happening is you are subsidizing your customers by keeping your overheads low and passing these cost savings straight on to the customer. You should be keeping those profits for yourself. And I suspect that that's what most of the viewers today watching us aren't actually doing in reality.
I think that's true. I think that's true.
What you need to remember is that if you have no work on at all, your business still has overheads. It still has costs. The bank account doesn't stay the same. It didn't over COVID when there was a lockdown. Your office rent, your admin staff costs, your wages, your vans, your petrol, your liability insurance, your accountancy fees, any loan repayments, all this money keeps going out of the bank account. So you need to work out a whole year's cost for all of these. You then divide it up to get a weekly overhead, and you need to allocate those costs to the job you're going to be pricing. So if the job takes 6 months, you need to add in half of your annual costs. You then put your markup on top of all of that with your labour, your plant and materials to give your overall quote figure. Most of the listeners today will be surprised that their overheads are around probably 15% of their turnover if they're that type of business. So if you're only putting 15 to 20% markup on, which most builders tell me they do, in reality, you're only working for minuscule profits. And that's only if the job runs to timescale with no problems, which certainly in the current climate just rarely happens.
Yeah.
So working like this means you're not running a profitable business. You're basically working for a wage. Now, builders set up their businesses to be independent, to have a secure future. In reality, many are working insane hours a week, earning little more than if they were employed. But they also have the added stress of running a business as well. With few exceptions, every builder I talk to wants to come off the tools. And to do that, they need to pay someone to do what they were doing on the site, as well as pay their own salary. And as the business grows, they're going to incur these extra costs, and they need to take account of that now. If you don't, you'll be in the same position in 10 years' time, but with a bad back, failing knees, and probably a divorce behind you as well, because you spend all your time working and not in a private life.
That's not a nice crystal ball you've got there, Simon.
No.
Make that go away.
That's the reality of the business I'm seeing. You know, half of my builders are divorced. Over 300 of them are divorced, some numerous times, actually. They have no private life. So
Yes.
business as usual isn't an option here, as there are loads of competitors nibbling at your heels. To succeed in business, you need to keep moving forwards and upwards.
Yeah, well, it all makes perfect sense, Simon. But tell me, have you got a magic wand as well as the crystal ball? How do they make this work?
I wish I did. I'd be doing the lottery numbers much more accurately. But what they need to do is you need to quote today as if you're already where you want to be. You've got to quote like the bigger players and charge what you're worth. So this is what I suggest you do. Go back to the last 3 jobs you did. Assume that you were off the tools, sitting in your new rented office with your secretary helping with you with the paperwork, add in the cost for a foreman to do the site work, and maybe an extra van for him, office rent, secretary's wages and their pension contributions, lighting, heating, insurance, etc., etc., etc. Then add in, on top of that, your normal markup for profit and see what you would have had to charge. And I think you'll be absolutely dumbfounded by how much you need to put your prices up. And the reality is that if you want to come off the tools in the future, you need to be charging this increased price today. Otherwise, it will never happen. So you have no choice here. If you're serious about growing the business, you have to charge more. Now, more established builders, they have these higher overheads. So when they add their 20 or 30% markup, which a lot of them do, they're going to be far more expensive in the marketplace than you. And they're still in business. They're still winning work. So it can be done, and you know it can be done. Working on the tools yourself, unfortunately, is not a sustainable business model. It only works whilst you're relatively young, you're fit and in good health. And you have to plan ahead for when your circumstances will inevitably change. And none of this here, what we're talking about, is about ripping the customer off. It's about charging what you should have been charging all along. And now is the absolute perfect time to move your business upwards.
Yeah. One thing before I start talking about the software a little bit, if I may, it's just a thought I was having. A lot of customers of Estimator Express and HP sell software products. They're not necessarily on a growth mission to become, mega core building company. As you said, it's a lifestyle business often. However, the business takes over the life, as often it does if you're self-employed. So I guess it's as much about, going back to the actual webinar subject, future-proofing. It's how to make that business sustainable, how to get the work-life balance right so that you're not always on site, that there is someone else you can rely on, that you have got the costs for people to help you out with quoting and that kind of thing, so that you have a better life today. Obviously, that solid foundation helps you then go on to grow. Clearly, you're in the best possible position to grow if you've got that right. But it's about turning the business back into the company that you wanted it to be, which will allow you to step back a little bit from, as you say, from the tools, sort of pension, maybe have some healthcare, those kind of things that if you're working for somebody else, you'd get. Anyway, so that was just an observation. So that's off my head thought there. Have you got any thought on that before I start talking?
This building business is not about filling the diary, without a shadow of a doubt. It's really hard work if you do that with low margin jobs. You're dealing with clients that aren't looking to pay the right money. You're scrabbling around to try and get a profit. Your guys aren't happy because they're having to really push themselves to get the job done to the quality they want. This business is all about working for the right customers for the right money and building a proper business. And then you get referrals at a higher margin. It's a win-win position. And life is so much different, different if you do this. It's a virtuous circle. Doing it any other way is really, really hard graft. And all the pressures, the extra pressures that building businesses are under at the moment means it's almost impossible, certainly if you're juggling multiple jobs at a time with the shortage of materials and labour and increasing prices. So, this is vitally important, moving the business up market. Yeah.
Okay. And part of that, solution is about knowing your numbers, knowing your genuine costs of the build, knowing your overheads, adding your margin on top of all of that. So with my software hat back on, and where the solution Estimator Express can add value, it's about the detail that goes into your estimate. A large amount of money can be lost depending on the accuracy of the quote, and a large amount can be lost also, unfortunately, on poor management of the job. Let's take the simpler element, the accuracy of the quote, first off. I did talk about this in a recent webinar, actually. Again, you can go and see that one. It's all about inflation, and it's essential viewing right now. Because if you don't know what's going on with inflation and have some sense of where material pricing, particularly, are going to be next year, you're going to be walking into loss-making jobs next year. You're going to sleepwalk into it without realizing, unfortunately. So do watch that one if you've got a few minutes. But that was all about inflation, as I say, rising prices, and these basically neutralize any of the money that you were going to earn on the job. So if you've quoted for it today and not taken account of inflation, and you bung that quote into the client's happy with it. With inflation taken account of, you could easily be losing money, as I say, next year. So to judge how much money you're really making, going full circle, you've got to take inflation into account when you're quoting for your jobs. And as we said before, lots of builders that are talking to us, they're booked up 6, 9, 12 months ahead. It must seem great to be that booked up. But given that construction cost inflation is at its highest for a generation, in July, it was reported that construction inflation was 20% year on year, which is absolutely massive. And I checked in again. I was like, so a generation is 25, 30 years, isn't it? Like, yeah, so it's the highest in 25 or 30 years. So when you're pricing, you've got to be massively mindful of this. It's not a few percent, not 5%. It's been 20%. And everything I'm reading from the builders, merchants, and supply chain is that there's not going to be a massive shift in that. Every single month, significant increases are coming out of suppliers. And that's a whole webinar in itself as to why that's happening. But applying inflation isn't quite as simple as just slapping 10% on the job and hoping for the best. In the webinar that I was referring to, we do actually show a bit of a model as to the complexities of it, because it is a bit of a faff to get right in mathematical terms, but it's a bit like compound interest, but the opposite, compound inflation. You've got this situation where if you're starting a job in, say, 6 months' time, you've got 6 months worth of inflation before you even start the job, as I was saying. So that means that if you priced it today, next month, you've got to add inflation to the job price of today. Then the month after that, you've got to apply inflation to the previously inflated price, and so on. So every month up to that 6 month start date, you've got this inflation built up on top of the previous month's already inflated price. So as I said, it's a bit of a complicated calculation, get my teeth back in. So it could help to have software to do that for you. And Estimator Express will do that for you. The other problem that we find with accuracy is that a lot of firms come to us talking about use of square meterage rates or square foot, or they have spreadsheets, and a lot of those spreadsheets have experience built in over time. But unfortunately, in my opinion, both of those methods don't cut it today. That does not cut it at all. Why? Well, firstly, the prices that are built into those, either square meterage rates or the spreadsheets, are out of date. They absolutely are, because it's very difficult to stay on track of it. And they've usually got something missing, or if it's a spreadsheet, it's a formula error. There's no perfect spreadsheet in life. I spend a lot of my time in spreadsheets, and it's difficult to make sure they're spot on. And they don't automatically reflect the specifics of the new job that's come along. It might be similar, but it's not the same. And so if you're just quoting square meterage rates, you're going to be missing stuff that you're going to have to pick up on later, and usually that's going to have to come out of your pocket rather than going back to the client. I know, a simple thing, but often these average rates or spreadsheets don't tend to take account of wastage or wear and tear on items. So, cement mixers, spades, the van, these things need replacing over time. And unfortunately, lots of stuff goes walkies from site. You're going to have to replace. Who's going to pay for it? Does it just come straight out of your bank account? Or do you, like with Estimator Express, calculate a little bit of it on every single job? It's a bit like your overhead point, Simon. All of these things are a small percentage of every single job that you do. So you need to charge a bit of it to every job. So it's the kind of site overhead. It's not just the general business overhead. It's the running the site overhead. And talking of overheads, obviously you need to add that onto the job, as well as the inflation, and then and only then it's the profit margin. And that, as you said, Simon, I think your word was, you'll be dumbfounded. You'll be dumbfounded about how much cost that actually adds onto the job. And sometimes when customers get Estimator Express and they run their first job, they think, wow, it's a bit expensive. It's come out a bit high. And we go through the job with them, we check all the inputs. Well, actually, no, that is the price. You've just been missing some of this stuff before. You weren't thinking about overhead. You weren't thinking about wastage. So it's quite surprising. And that's what you should have been charging in the past. And obviously, your spreadsheet, your square meter rate, it doesn't give you all the management information that you need to run the job effectively. So with Estimator Express, when you've done an estimate, you then have all of your other information. So you've got your cost reports, your profit forecasts, your cash flow reports, your schedules of everything that you need. All of that automatically comes off that initial estimate. So you get it for free effectively. So that's super helpful. And this is what bigger firms are doing. They charge more, and they're winning jobs doing so. So with Estimator Express, just repeating myself a little bit, you get access to the very latest materials prices as they update monthly into the software. So as the market changes, so does the software, because it is so volatile. It does calculate wastage for you, allows for your overheads, calculates your inflation, and puts that profit margin, that proper profit margin, on top of it all. And then to top all that off, you've then got your project planned properly because you've got an automatic build program or Gantt chart off the back of it. And as I said before, it schedules the work automatically. So you've got materials schedules for your suppliers, your labour schedules, your plant schedules. So you've effectively got your shopping list of everything you need. And because it's plugged into your Gantt chart, you've got a list of what you need and when. So these are brilliant for negotiating with your suppliers as you've got the full itemised list of everything you need, and hopefully they'll be in a better position to agree better pricing for you because they can see the entirety of the job. And importantly, they can be forward ordering because they know what you need and when. And I've read recently some articles from the Builders Merchants Press where they're talking if they could advise anything to their builder clients, it would be to get yourself planned and organised better in advance, because if you can give them that notice, then they will be in a better position to order it in for you. So you do need to be paying attention to your organisational side of things as well as just that initial quote. So in summary, I'd say you can't trim costs if you don't know what your costs are. You can't improve margins if you don't know what your margin is. You can't fix all of these issues or grow the business without the visibility of this data and control of the project. And you know, I'm going to say this. You know, I work for a software company, but I believe that with it, you'll operate absolutely at your best, and you'll be in a position to work on these jobs that Simon has been talking about, moving up market, improving your worth through quality quotes and itemization of the project. And one thing quickly before I move on, obviously in this volatile market, price-wise, it's important to have the flexibility with your client to be able to raise the price if unexpected price rises occur. Now, clearly, if you've used Estimator Express already to do those inflation calculations, you should have a sensible view of what that project is going to cost when you're starting in 6-9 months anyway, because it's in a good estimate of that already for you. And it's also giving you this padding of wastage and wear and tear and so on. So hopefully you should be in a good place anyway. But should there be some other unexpected shock to the system, you know, something comes every few weeks, it seems at the moment. If it's not fuel, it's loo roll. If it's not loo roll, it's petrol. You know, sorry, I've said fuel is timber or whatever. There's always something at the moment. So I would add our software contracts expert to the mix, because the contracts it produces between you and your client and also you and your subcontractor enable you to vary the price should you find yourself in the unhappy scenario that prices have risen significantly before you start. And unfortunately, on smaller projects such as home extensions and renovation work, it's not really the done thing. And in fact, if you get it wrong, you're not really on the right side of the consumer rights regs. Which are important, because if you don't, you can invalidate your own kind of contract. But as the situation is so evolving at the moment, and as you're so booked up in advance, we've worked with a specialist barrister to produce contract terms where you can vary the price as long as you have given notice to your client that within 2 to 3 months of the start date that you'll do that review, and that they have the opportunity to say whether they want to go ahead or not at that start point of the project with the new price. But there's no point in you doing that job. If the client says no, you've got to be joking. You've got to think, well, the price has gone up. Do I want to absorb this cost and lose money on the job? Or do I have to pull out gracefully from this project? So whilst it is a great thing to be booked up, you know, there's a big, strong caveat over it at the moment. So, Simon, what advice can you give to builders to have the confidence to make these changes within their world? It's quite significant change, I'd say.
Yeah, I think what you need to do is take a step back and look at the whole of the market not just the sort of small bubble that you're in currently with your current client base. Good clients are desperate to find a reliable and a trustworthy builder, and they will pay a premium for them. For the wrong customer, price is everything, and good builders will never be cheap enough to make a profit with them. Worse than that, if you get the job, you make no money, and they recommend you to all their friends as being a good and a cheap builder. You can't win. Any homeowner that's used a cheap builder and had problems, they won't make the same mistake again. They realise you get what you pay for. That's why good builders are always in demand. And I mentioned earlier that when you don't get the job, the main reason clients give you is your price. And the reason for that is it's easy and it's non-confrontational, and it makes you go away. And in reality, it's one of the smallest reasons that clients tell us. The truth is, these are the biggest reasons that clients didn't use you. Number one, the quote took too long to come. Excuse me. Number two, the quote wasn't detailed enough. 3, you didn't sound or look professional enough when they met you. 4, you failed to take proper notes and you missed stuff off your quote. 5, surprisingly, you were too cheap and they didn't think you could do the job properly for the price you quoted. That's a surprising one to most people. And the last one is overquoting on PC sums. Excuse me. The first two are very easy to overcome. That's why I'm a big advocate of HBXL. The big reason, though, is overquoting on PC sums. Now, we've quoted this in detail in a previous webinar, but my view is your quote should never have a PC sum in it at all. It's the single biggest reason that builders fail to get the job. You very rarely nowadays, certainly on the residential jobs, get a fully detailed second fix specification. And by that, I mean make, model, and quantity. Any honest builder, therefore, will allow a PC sum, for instance, for a lounge for 4 or 5 double sockets and 6 downlighters. And I see cheap quotes with a standard electrical installation for a lounge, 1 double socket and a central pendant, which nobody in their right minds has nowadays.
Not these days.
No, but if you replicate that up through all of the second fix items, the high value items, your bifold, your flooring, your boiler, your skirting, everything like this makes a huge difference to your quote total. In our free business review, we check the builder's quote format. And last week I saw one, the builder did a quote for £80,000 plus VAT, and over £30,000 worth of it was in PC sums.
Right, okay.
So I said to the builder, you're just making yourself look expensive compared to the other quotes. You'll never get to the shortlist doing your quotes this way. All you're ever going to hear is that you're very expensive. And the builder said, well, that's exactly what happened. I got a return email immediately saying I was the most expensive quote and she wasn't using me. So you have to understand that when you put your quote in, nobody's going to turn around and say, that's brilliant. When can you start? That's much cheaper than I thought. What they're going to do is try and whittle all the builders they're talking down to a short list of 2. Often now going over the web and all these rating sites, they're getting 5, 6, 7, sometimes more quotes. They only want to talk to 2 of you. And they're not going to look through the detail of anybody's quote. They're going to go straight to the back page, look at the total. If you're half as much again as the other guy, you're in the bin straight away. And you haven't had a chance to explain why. The price you're doing with HBXL and doing all these and all the detail is what they're going to need to pay at the end of the day. But you're honest and you're quoting what they're going to need, whereas very rarely is everybody else doing that. So you're making yourself look and sound expensive and being knocked into the bin before you've had a chance to get your message across properly. So there are simple ways to avoid this problem. I don't want to go over them again. We've covered it in a lot of detail in previous webinars, so do yourself a favour and have a look at those. But to win the jobs against the cheap quotes, you need to look and sound different. The cheap guys will be every bit as good as you at point of sale, if not, to be honest, better than you. They don't ever finish.
Natural salesmen, sorry, interrupting. They're probably natural salesmen, you know, they've got... you know, a lot of builders, you know, that's their forte. You know, they're excellent builders, quality, you know, craftsmanship, not salespeople. But on the flip side, these cheaper guys, I guess, more towards the cowboy end of things, they're just slick salespeople.
Well, if you think about it, they have to be. They can't ever finish a job for the price they're quoting.
Yeah.
So they don't get recommendations. They don't get second jobs. If they don't con somebody this week, they don't have food on the table next week. So you're never going to outsell these guys. They've got lovely vans, Simon t-shirt, everything about them is spot on, brilliant websites. It all looks brilliant at point of sale because that's all their skills. So these are some of the things that you need to pay attention to overcome that. You can't win by trying to beat them at their own game. You have to be different. You have to prove you're different to them.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing, show confidence. You know you're worth it. Look and sound professional. Have a website. And on that website, don't put standard photos, stock photos that you buy. Put before, during, and after pictures with your band sign in it or your sideboard in it, so you can see it's actually you doing the job.
Mm-hmm.
Have a proper business email address. I can't believe how many people have a proper website and don't use the domain name in their emails. They've got Virgin, Sky, Live, Gmail, Yahoo. It just sounds like you're a hobby builder, not a proper professional. Be punctual. That's a big bugbear with clients when you don't turn up on time. And if you are going to be late, phone them and let them know you're going to be late. It's just courtesy. Show your expertise. Make useful suggestions. My own hat on here. Use the Better Business Group to help with every inquiry. Do a detailed quote and quickly. Use HBXL software. I'll sing your praises again. Add a copy of your insurance details with a quote. Include your Better Business Group rating certificate and proof of any other qualifications you've got. Make yourself look different. Follow up on the quote. Don't be complacent here. These cowboy guys, they're brilliant at following up, far more proactive than you'll be. And very importantly, which most builders don't think about, you need to maintain a good credit rating. If you do this, you'll present differently to the cheap builders. You'll instill confidence that you're the right guy to trust with their home and with their life savings, and you will win more work. Basically, you need to decide what type of customers you want, and then you've got to make yourself attractive to that type of customer. You can't win by trying to be all things to all people here. Be selective, be targeted, and make your business attractive to those people.
Okay, so in summary, good customers are looking for a good builder. They will pay extra to get one, but you're going to have to prove it, I guess, is the summary. So let's assume that our viewers want to make the changes that you've been discussing, Simon. Again, it's a big challenge. Where do they start? What's the plan? Have you got one for them? Yeah,
I have a 10-point plan for the new builds that we take on. The first one is you have to really understand your business. You have to understand your customers. You have to understand your marketplace. We can do this for you because we survey all your past customers. We talk to them why they used you, why they didn't use you. We work with your current inquiries to find out what they like and don't like about you and what your competitors are doing and their prices. So you need to learn how your competitors are working, because it's not just what you're doing in a bubble here. It's what you're doing in comparison to the other quotes they're getting and the other builders they're talking to. You need to discover why you're truly winning and losing jobs, not why they tell you, which is always the price. You need to differentiate yourself from the competition. You can't look and sound the same as them and be more expensive and hope to win the jobs. You need to have a decent website and a social media presence. That's more important now than ever before. This is the most difficult part of your job. You need to build a good team and you need to keep them. And the primary way to do that is to have good jobs they can work on with good customers, pay guys a little extra. You can afford to do that because you're charging a little extra to the customer in the first place. They'll be loyal to you, then they want to work on your sites because they're good, easy sites with good clients. Make it known that you use contracts. Cheap builders don't want to use contracts. Make it known that you take health and safety seriously. COVID's really brought that home to people. It's very important. Present accurate and detailed quotes. The cheap guys, they want a very short quote with no breakdown so they can deem everything to be an extra. I still see quotes that are half a page long or a page long. There's no way that can encompass everything that you're quoting for unequivocally. My view is before you start the job, the paperwork should reflect exactly what you're going to be doing and exactly what the customer's going to be paying for. So there's no arguments down the line. It protects you against the cowboy customers trying it on and telling you, oh, but you told me that all my downlighters will be gold plated or whatever, which you're leaving yourself open to if you don't do a detailed quote. And I suppose the last thing is you need to decide where you really want to be in 3 or 4 or 5 years' time, wherever it might be, and you've got to devise a plan to get there. Nothing's going to change if you carry on with business as usual. You've got to make things happen. You've got to do things differently to the way you're doing it today. And as we were saying before, it's a big challenge. And I can think, well, I think if I was listening today, I'd be thinking, wow, yeah, everything you're saying, Simon, is making sense. But gosh, it's quite a big, exercise. I'm trying to think of the right expression. It's a big mouthful to chew. So I guess this is where you come in. Obviously, shameless cue for your services, but
I guess that's where you come in. You can help go over all of these points and that in this plan and help make it happen. You're kind of like the critical friend, I guess, because some of these things are a bit painful to hear as well. You know, they won't, no one likes to hear that what you've been doing for the last 5 years is actually not quite right. But I guess it's where you're here for.
It's an only world out there, isn't it? And most of the builders I talk to are good, honest guys. They do a good job, and they're not stupid people, actually. And if they could see a way to change things, they'd be doing it today. So obviously it needs something different to happen. The benefit I have is I've worked with all these builders over the years, and I've worked with loads of them, hundreds of them currently. So I know what good builders are doing, and we can pass that expertise on to the builders that we're mentoring that may be 5 or 6 years behind them. So we're not doing this off the top of our head. We know what works. We know what the customers are looking for. We know what the builders need to do to make themselves attractive. So it is painful, and you know, it costs, whatever changes they're going to make in their business is going to cost them somewhere down the line. It's either going to cost them in lost profits carrying on the way they are now, or they'll have to pay somebody to help them. Certainly singing in my own hats, there's no way they can spend the sort of money we charge and get the help and advice and the quality leads that we give them. So, you know, we want to deal with good builders that are looking to move their businesses forward. We're not looking for people that just want to maintain the status quo. They're no good to us. To be honest, they're no good to themselves, you know. So it is a challenge without a shadow of a doubt, and it's more challenging now than ever before. But the opportunities to make this change are bigger now than ever before with the current climate.
Yeah. Well, I guess there's a bit of a following wind, as you were saying before. I noted earlier in one of your comments where you said, look, if you make these changes, or at least a good number of these changes, including putting your price up and trying to back it, as we've said, but you put your prices up and you don't win a job, it's very likely that something else is going to come along quite easy. You know, jobs are a bit like buses at some points at the moment. You know, there's another one coming. So, you know, all is not lost. But when it's more challenging, when it's more recessionary in pressure, you know, every job then you don't want to lose. You know, it's critical that, you know, builders feel it's critical that they retain them. But if another job is going to come along, I would say now is the perfect time to try it out. Have a really good concerted effort at everything we've been talking about today, and make those price rises, and then see what happens. But you've obviously got to be reasonably dedicated to the process to make it happen.
What's the alternative? The alternative is you stay as you are. You're not making the right sort of money really for a sustainable future. Things get quieter. Then you think, oh, I need to change what I'm doing. You can't do it then, because everybody else is in the same position. Prices are spiraling lower. Competition's tougher. The time to make all these changes is when you've got a bit of money in the bank, you've got work on, and there are jobs happening. You can't do it when things, and this is the big error that most builders I see fall into. The building trade is really cyclical. It's the first into recession, it's the last out of recession. There's only one thing that follows a really good time like we're in now, and that's a really bad time. So have no illusions about that. It will happen. So the skill is to use the resources you've got now and the time you've got now to really make these changes, start to make these changes and move on the path to a more sustainable and profitable future, which is what you went into business for in the first place.
Okay, so let's look forwards to our Builders 2022. And as we said before, you know, many of you have got jobs already booked in. But the question I'd ask you is, are they definitely worth doing? Are you going to lose any money on those jobs versus what you initially quoted? And ask the question, is there anything you can do about that if you know, if you think that you could lose money on what you initially quoted? What changes can you make to the spec? What can you agree with the client? What can you renegotiate? It might be a slightly awkward conversation, I would say, to have with the client. But if you don't, as I was saying before, you're just going to sleepwalk into losing money and bankrolling the client. And it's not your job to do that. And really importantly, I noted, Simon, with interest, what you were saying earlier about what value are you bringing to their property? Their house is only going to go up in value based on the work that you've done, you know, and some. It's not just the cost of the work, you know, adding another bedroom or, you know, extension or converting the kitchen adds significant value. So they will have got all the value and you'll have bankrolled it. So have a serious look at those jobs that you've booked in for next year, if you've already quoted and agreed them, before you start the work. So do that sanity check, as it were, with Estimator Express now, and look, is that job still worth doing? And you can do that free of charge, actually, with a 14-day trial of Estimator Express. And we have software coaches on hand to check in with you about the software, how you're getting on, and whether we can help you produce that first quotation with the software. And of course, for mid to late 2022, for when you've not got jobs lined up, every job that you quote for now, you need to have very carefully priced it with firstly today's prices and then inflation added on top. So, it's an even worse situation if you're using square meterage or spreadsheet prices from, last year, and you don't add inflation. You're in a double, negative there. So make sure that you're pricing these new jobs very carefully, as I said, with inflation built in. And of course, much of the money, as we've said before, is in the management. You can easily fritter away a ton of margin through poor management. So use the software tools, the Gantt charts, and plan the job properly, and use that build program to automatically produce your materials, your labour, and your plant schedules. Again, I'm repeating myself a little bit from earlier. But that is going to get you super organised, and they're instantly produced from that initial quote. So you're not doing extra work. You've got that for free, as it were, off the back of the software, and then use them actively to manage your booking and ordering. And I know most builders are going to go, it's a laugh, no building project ever goes to program, but I would say, why not start as you mean to go on, get yourself sorted now. And that build program in the software isn't fixed. It's not frozen. You can flex it and change it as the program, does it. If it's, got a really awful February, March with snow or what have you, change that build program, and it will cascade and reorganize everything you need on site and when you need people, so you can be giving forward notice every step of the way. And that's part of the problem, isn't it, right now? As we've said, subcontractors are in demand, so they're not very available. Suppliers, builders, merchants, etc., are finding it challenging to service orders and so on. So being ahead of the game is what you need on that front. So organisation's critical. And a side note, actually, Simon, before I go, I hear a lot of people saying, I can just about guesstimate the price of the job, but it takes me hours to kind of get all the quantities right for everything. And it's kind of counterintuitive to me that they haven't got an accurate quote in the first place, but then it takes them hours to do the quantification and getting everything sorted to order for the job. But if they just got the quote accurate in the first place, number one, they'd have made money on the job, and B, they'd have had all this stuff automatically produced for them. It's a win-win. So don't pretend that you know the price. I know it's a lot of builders have pride in knowing approximately what a job is going to cost, just turning up on site and seeing the drawing. But
when we do take on a new builder, the first thing we do is to get them to send their quotes over to us live, so we have a look over them before they send them to the customer. Yeah. And I routinely get those in the early hours of the morning, 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, you're working like this 6 or 7 days a week.
Yeah.
You do a hard job on site, then you go and see potential customers, then you come and work on your quotes after everybody's gone to bed. Yeah. How accurate, at the end of the week, how accurate can that price possibly be? It's impossible. And more worryingly, in a few hours, they're going to work on a dangerous site with no sleep. So it's a mad lifestyle if you do it the hard way.
Yeah.
But that life can be so much easier with the tools you've got, with the help we give. It's life-changing what we can do. We're sort of gold standard of helping people together. We're a gold standard of helping them move their business.
I like to think so. I mean, when I watch any of these sessions, but I think a lot of this is common sense. It makes sense. It's just hard to do. And hopefully, with Simon's advice and critical friend review of how you're doing things, and the software giving you a kick up the bum in terms of your pricing, I think you'll have a really successful 2022. So I guess concluding, you need to price your 2022 jobs at the right price. I know that's stating the obvious. You've probably been thinking you've been doing that for however many years you've run the business, but more important now than ever. Don't put being busy and everything booked into the diary, from an ego perspective, in front of genuine profitability and the health of your business. I know it does ease the mind having jobs booked in really far in advance, but everything we've talked about today, if they're not priced correctly with inflation built in, there's no point in doing them. It's business, not busyness. After all, as I like to say, it's true. I think we're probably nearly there in our advice today. I think I've talked a lot about how an Estimator Express can sort your quotes out with your inflation and back it all up with the output. So I don't think I've got any more to say on that. Is there anything, Simon, that you'd like to conclude with before we wrap up today?
Yeah, I think it's important to have faith in your skills. You need to convince customers that you're worthy of their money and the value you can add to the property. Don't fall back into your comfort zone. It's not sustainable. Stay strong. Don't undersell yourself. Ensure you charge what you're worth. Go after the right type of jobs, use the right software, and make every day count financially. I would just give a little plug. The Better Business Group is offering a free of charge business review with one of our directors. We'll find out how you're working now, where you are price-wise in comparison to other builders.
Mm-hmm.
If you want, we'll survey some of your past customers to see why they really chose you and how they rated every aspect of you and your staff and your business. And we'll give you an initial plan of how to improve your business. All that is free of charge and without obligation. If you then want to take it further, we'll work with you on every one of your own inquiries. We'll find out why you won or lost the job, who your competitors were, what they liked about you or disliked about you, how your price compared, and so on and so forth. And we'll analyse all this, we report it back to you, and we mentor you to improve ongoing. On average, our builders are able to charge 15 to 20% more than previously, and they win around 13% more of their quotes into business. And in addition, we'll give you pre-vetted good leads to quote on. They're all structural jobs for residential clients. They're looking to improve their own homes, not doing it as a business. They've already applied for planning permission, so they're serious. And in the main, they're high quality clients looking for a good, trustworthy builder, not a cheap builder. They had that last time they had a disaster. And the average value this year that we've given out is over £126,000 a lead, so they're nice jobs.
Yeah.
I hope you found the webinar useful and helpful. Don't hesitate to contact me afterwards if you want to have a chat about your business. Thanks for listening.
Oh, sorry, sorry, Simon, I interrupted you. I was just going to say your details will be up at the end of the webinar. Sorry, back to you.
No, I'm done. I was just saying thank you very much for listening.
Oh no, well, thank you, Simon, for sharing your absolute years of experience and wisdom with us. As I say, a lot of it's common sense. It's just making it happen. And so I would suggest highly that you do drop Simon an email with any questions, or give him a shout, phone number, and get that free session and review booked in. I think that initial plan is critical. Even if you don't take things further with the Better Business Group, I think that will, it's real food for thought, and hopefully it won't be too daunting when you've got someone helping you think about it all. As we've said, it's quite a shift in approach, thinking less about busyness and more about your business. And it's safe to say, from my perspective, I work for a software company. It's my father's software business. He was a builder and developer himself. Found the same challenges of all of you listening. And I, as a child, I saw all of this happening and playing out, through very many recessions and bumpy periods as well in the construction industry. But today, lots of firms are adopting digital to make improvements to their business. It doesn't need to be challenging. It is the way forward. There's lots of people here within the HVXL team to help you. And on top of the estimating software that we've talked about, Simon, you mentioned about the health and safety paperwork and demonstrating that you've got your risk assessments, that you've got your company health and safety policy in order. You have your cost assessments and so on. All of that is produced in a software product that we've got called Health and Safety Expert, so it can help you with that. And on the contract side, Simon can help you, or we have a software product called Contracts Expert, as we said earlier, which will help you nail the agreement with the client, make sure there's no margin for disagreement within that. We also have CAD software to help you do the drawings and the 3D modeling to help set yourself apart. If you're going to charge more, that kind of thing can also help. And we have a range of project management tools as well to help you stay organized. So all of those products actually talk to each other. So it's one of those situations where if you do something once, it then cascades throughout all the software. You don't have to keep repeating yourself, and that in itself saves you a hell of a lot of time. So you can have a demo of any of the software, or you can trial it. The details again will be on at the end of the session. And needless to say, we're here for you. It's our mission in life. That's what we're here for at HBXL. Not many people know, Simon, but HBXL actually stands for Helping Builders Excel. It was back in the day, 22 years ago, whatever, when it was set up. That was the actual name, Helping Builders Excel. People say, what the heck is HBXL? You know, get us confused with the bank, HSBC, obviously, but HBXL is all about helping builders excel. We want to help future-proof the firm. Bet you didn't know, Simon. I can tell by you.
No, I didn't. I thought it was House Builder Excel. I was wrong.
No. All of this change is possible. So you, Simon, take a look at the software, and we can help. All the links to the webinars and sessions, including the Profit Masterclass and the recent webinar on inflation, will be on the webpage where you can find this recording as well. So I think that's everything. I think we should say goodbye. We've talked about a lot. And you'll get a copy of this if you're watching live. You can watch it again if you need to, or you might be sick of this, but hopefully you've taken something away from today's session. So Simon, I think we should say goodbye.
Yeah.
So thanks as always, Simon.
Pleasure, and thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, well, I'll see you very soon. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
All the best.
Bye.
Bye, guys.